The TV OS space remains fragmented yet highly influential in viewers' content choices. New data explains how the Big Six use that influence to their advantage. Listen on.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and Colin Dixon from In-Screen Media is with me. Hey there, Colin. How is everything?
It's great, Will. Thanks. It's been a bit of a quiet week in our business. It looks like people are in a post-NAB hangover or something. But we've got a couple of things that we want to talk about this week, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, talking about a hangover, anyone who watched the Sunday Masters tournament is probably still in stabilizing mode because the drama was just incredible for golf fans. I really enjoyed it. It was great fun to watch, a lot of drama. So, but it was a quiet week around, it seemed, but we have a couple news items this week in the main story. So you are going to kick us off with Peacock.
I am, yes. And Peacock are doing something, Will, which it's a complete mystery to me why other streaming services aren't doing this. So briefly, they issued an update to their mobile app this week, and they've added 3 very specific mobile features to that app: can't miss clips, prediction games, and mini games. So what each of those features are is can't miss clips provides viewers with previews of upcoming episodes of popular series, alongside clips of the most memorable moments in television, movies, etc. in their purview. Prediction games, these are interactive games which will be coupled with live events and reality TV shows, and they let people do things like voting and guess outcomes and check stats to see how well their predictions match up. So that's the second. And the third, the mini games. Well, they've introduced 3 mini games to help test puzzling skills and pop culture knowledge, that type of thing. And they have 3 at the moment. What the question mark, which is an image and an array of blank spaces, and you have to, the task is to figure out the word or phrase which describes the image. Daily swap and downwards. I'll leave that to everybody to go and check those out. I guess the broader point here, Will, is I'm seeing very few SVOD providers take advantage of mobile and take advantage of the fact that we know that particularly younger viewers, when they're in the mobile environment, have a shorter attention span, and they're not providing content through their mobile apps that will engage them and keep them glued to the service even when they're in the mobile domain. In other words, they're continuing to solely rely on connected TV, which I think is a mistake. One of the things we know, of course, is that short form content works really good in a mobile environment. And it's not like the services don't have them. They have a ton of short form content to do with the series and shows that they're providing. And the reason I know they have a ton of content is because they're putting them on YouTube. I do not understand why they're not leveraging that in their mobile environment. I'll give you a great example. I'm a big Paramount Plus user. It's one of the services I use the most. And one of the things I've been watching on Paramount recently is UEFA Champions League. They're putting game capsules of European Champions League on YouTube. They're up there really quickly. So if you missed the game or you were watching another game while another game was going on, they've taught me to go to YouTube. Why aren't I going to Paramount Plus? I can see that they could have game capsules there. They could put a little bit of effort in and segment out the discussion of the games after so that I could watch those. This would get me engaged with Paramount on my mobile device, keep me more closely bound into their ecosystem. Now, it looks like the folks at NBCU get this and are doing this with Peacock. Netflix is doing this somewhat, but it's really all focused around games. And The stupid thing about Netflix's approach is when you select a game from the Netflix app on mobile, it installs the game separately, and then you don't have to go in Netflix anymore. So, and there really is no other content. So anyway, my rant is very simple. Why aren't the SVOD providers customizing their approach to the mobile world to give us shorter form content to get us in the apps, using them more on mobile? It seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, a missed opportunity. It also kind of harkens back to our discussion from the Olympics last summer, where we observed that NBCU was releasing on both YouTube and in Peacock, and we were both fans of that. We were using different approaches. I was looking at YouTube, you were looking at Peacock. But yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like low-hanging fruit for an app like Paramount Plus to be adding the highlights and clips to their own app as well as to YouTube.
Yeah. It seems like an easy play, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay, so what caught your eye this week?
Yeah, so what caught my eye this week was an article in the Wall Street Journal about Q1 box office performance for overall, but also more specifically for original movies. These are movies that are not based on comic books and sequels and spin-offs and everything else, but rather original ideas. And the article was kind of going through the various original idea movies from this quarter and how poorly they did, and really highlighting that it seems like the only original movie that exceeded expectations was a Minecraft movie, but even that is one that is based on a huge built-in audience. Minecraft is obviously very, very popular. It also, the article noted that this Q1 of 2025 was the lowest box office for Q1 since 1996, with the exception of the pandemic quarter. So down significantly. And, there, I think, are lots of different reasons for this, but one reason that the article cited, which, we can talk about for a moment, is that the value prop for original movies has continued to decline relative to the high-profile series that are now on the various streaming services. So, the idea of going to see an original movie for whatever, $15 a ticket, a 2-hour experience, versus paying that much, give or take, for a month of a streaming service, the value prop is off. And also, I think there's something to be said, and I don't have any specific data to back this up, but I think there's something to be said for how immersive a 10-episode series on a Netflix, for example, can be, and how the characters and the plot can be developed over 10 episodes, dozen episodes, compared to what can happen over the course of a couple hours. So it's not that they can't coexist, but I think that the streaming has taken off and people's expectations have changed. And of course, A-list talent has moved over into the streaming environment. So it's not just in the theater where you can see, an actor like a Robert De Niro, who just did a limited series on Netflix, 0 Day. The world has really changed. And I think it'll be interesting to see. We talked a few weeks ago about how Amazon is increasing its output to 14 to 16 movies this year. I don't know how many of those are original ideas versus, spin-offs or sequels or what have you. But yeah, the article really underscored that it was a tough quarter in box office and continues to be.
Yeah, and that whole category, Will, it really seems that's been sort of subsumed into the SVOD world, doesn't it? I think I noticed this trend quite a while ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It became clear to me, at least, as you say, the engagement you can get in a limited series on an SVOD service. You can get 8 to 10 hours into a really intense drama, can just really enhance the experience so much. The quality that we can get in home now is just so much better. Most or many people have Ultra HD TVs with high dynamic range. The streamers are all providing content in that format. That is, of course, if you subscribe to the right tier to get it. And I remember there were some data from TV Rev and MX8 Labs that came out recently that said only 15% of US viewers said that they preferred watching movies in theaters. And I can tell you I've seen other data that says that the sort of stuff that they tend to reserve for the movie theaters is the big, tentpole, big action movies and stuff when they want to go and see in IMAX where, they get an experience that they can't get in the home. And yeah, I mean, convenience in that study, convenience was the number one reason cited for at home. 78% said that it was just more convenient. And this was almost inevitable to happen. And particularly when you have folks like Netflix and Amazon producing really high quality content. The interesting thing you mentioned about Amazon is those 14 or so movies that they're saying that they're going to produce this year. They say they are going to premiere them in theaters and give theaters an exclusive period. But looking at these numbers, I mean, are they going to make any money doing that? Maybe the best use of this is to do a sort of premium pay-per-view window inside of Prime Video and use that as the main money driver here. I don't know. But as you say, there's no easy answer, but it certainly looks like the standard fare that used to work in movie theaters isn't anymore.
Yeah. To your point there about what Amazon might do, I thought it was also interesting in the article that there was some grousing from theater owners that for original movies, they need to be backed up with significant ad campaigns because they don't have pre-existing awareness. They're not a sequel or spin-off or based on some built-in audience. And that, of course, costs money to put a big ad campaign behind an original movie. And, to the extent that studios are already, kind of strapped, it's difficult for them to muster those resources. So it kind of becomes a challenging situation. You compare it with a streaming service where they can highlight a movie or a series right on the initial page of their service or in the app, and they get built-in eyeballs that way at no cost, basically. So just another challenge I think that original movie ideas have in box office.
Yeah. I actually have seen some movies being advertised inside of the SVOD services, buying advertising time there in the top ad that you get in many interfaces. And I think that probably is an effective way of sensitizing people to what's going on in the theaters. But, there's so much great content in those services. It's very easy to get distracted and forget about that movie and just get sucked up into the great content that we're getting inside. I mean, there's so many great series that I still haven't seen that I'm looking forward to seeing inside of those services. And I think probably I'm not alone.
If you're not alone at all, I mean, that's the decision that tens of millions of people make every single weekend, right? Is do we go out to the movies? If so, what's even playing, what's caught our eye or caught our attention versus watching one of those series, as you said, that are, kind of packed up in their queue that they've been wanting to see the second season of this, fourth season of that. It's a never-ending decision cycle for consumers these days.
It sure is. It sure is.
Well, let's go ahead and move on. You have some new data from Hub that you want to talk about, TV OSs, and I know that's a favorite topic of yours. You wrote about it again this week. So go for it.
It is a favorite topic of mine. There's no question about that. And yes, as you mentioned, Hub Entertainment Research put out some new data this week. And if you want to get a look at some of those graphs, you should come to Will and I's posting of the podcast on our respective websites, and we'll include a couple of those diagrams there for you to check out. And you should also go to the Hub site. We'll include links to the Hub site for the full report with all of the data. Now, tracking TVOS is a pretty hairy business, Will. I see various parameters used to track them and to give the leaders. I kind of like the way Hub does it. So for me, the penetration of a TVOS is not that interesting. I'm really interested in the ones that are being used. And Hub the data that they're reporting on is their survey data is they ask people for which ones they're using once a month or more. In other words, that device, that TV or that streaming media player is plugged in or connected to Wi-Fi and they're actually streaming with it. So I think this is pretty good data. Now, based on this data, they looked at the TV OS, that's the software that's actually running the device, whether it be a streaming media player or a smart TV, as opposed to a brand like Samsung or like a Roku TV. So on that basis, Roku OS is the leader in the US market. I think everybody would have kind of expected that. But what's interesting here is it's quite a way ahead. 59% of these active TVs, monthly active TVs and streaming media players are running the Roku OS. And that's 10% ahead of the nearest rival, which is Tizen OS, which is running Samsung TVs. That's 49%. Fire TV OS and Web OS. Well, Fire TV is Amazon, Web OS is LG. They're pretty much tied at 35%. And Android TV, which I assume is including Google TV, is 23%. With SmartCast from Vizio at 21% and Zumo tvOS way back at 7%. Interestingly, I need to check with John Geigengach on this. Apple TV isn't included here, and I just wondered there if they asked about Apple TV or it fell below the fold. It's actually below 7%, which I would be kind of surprised. I thought it was a higher, but it may not be as high as that. So anyway, the interesting thing here, Will, is that Roku has actually extended its lead. I was looking at Hub's data from 2023, tracking this as well. And at that time, Roku OS and Tizen, Samsung's operating system, were kind of tied. And it really seems like Samsung has dropped off quite a lot and Roku has grown a little bit. So I thought that was a really interesting trend in the TV OSs. So that's the basic data on which the leading TV OSs are in the US market. Now, I think this is really key information because the TV OSs I think they've really become the most important link in the streaming TV delivery market, right? Pretty much everything that wants to reach a consumer on a television has to go through that streaming TV OS. And they're making a bunch of money. Roku made $4 billion in 2024. And well, I'll tell you, most of that money came via the Roku OS or its components, and I would lump in the Roku channel with that as well because that's built in, of course, into the Roku OS. Tizen's the same with Tizen Samsung TV Plus, which announced this week, by the way, that it has 700 channels in it in the US market, the most in the US. So it's kind of crazy. The other thing I mentioned that it's a complicated business measuring TV OSs. Well, funnily enough, Samsung Ads put out some data a couple of weeks ago on the penetration of, and this was smart TVs. So their data I thought was a lot more confusing than the Hub's data. And they were using data from an ARF-Dash study, and they actually had themselves, Samsung, way out in the lead with 67.8 million homes. Roku, they broke out Roku TVs and Roku streaming media players, which they put at 28 million and 16.2 million, which when you add the two together, that gets you to what, 44 million? Still way, way, way behind Samsung. But as I say, I think this is measuring something a little bit different. It's measuring penetration of devices. When you look at what really matters here, which is the active ones, the ones that are being used to stream, Roku is definitely the leader.
Yeah, and that's that's been the case for some time now, right? We've done podcasts previously on Roku's dominance in the OS world, at least here in the US or North America, maybe. And so nothing major there. I don't think. I don't know. What do you think? Is that consistent with what your thoughts are?
Well, I think the one comment I would make is that actually what we're seeing here is that folks like Fire TV and WebOS are making progress. They are boosting their share versus Roku. So Roku did grow a little bit over the last 2 years, but Fire TV and WebOS have grown more. So I think what that's saying here is that the connected TV market is expanding. More homes now have an active connected TV in them than they did 2023. That makes a lot of sense, right? That's just what's happening in the market at the moment. But Roku continues to win some of those new homes, but WebOS and Android TV are winning more. They're growing faster. And the other thing to take away from the hub data as well is that no one operating system owns a household. Most homes that have 2 or more smart TVs have 2 or more TV OSs. Most homes do not buy a TV based on the TV OS. They buy based on whatever they usually buy on, which is screen size, quality, and price. Those are the 3 things that really, really drive purchases here.
Interestingly, different model than in mobile, right? Where people will buy iPhones and, have a household become iOS centric or Apple centric. Rarely mixing and matching Android devices. Not that it doesn't happen, but you also wrote your experience about searching across these different OSs for the same show and illustrating how the experience can be quite different, and also the role that the increasingly important role that OSs are playing in the discovery function.
Yeah. So I mentioned how important they are in the delivery of content. They're the sort of everything goes through them, as it were, and even a base feature like universal search is becoming much more important. So more people are using universal search in their TV OSs. According to Hub data, 56% use universal search to search across multiple services at once. And that's sort of a good news, bad news thing. It's very convenient. It does get you a much broader view. It saves you going in and out of apps, which is, by the way, still the most popular way that people do go. 76% of people still do go into the app first to try and find content. So I guess they sort of guess at where they think it's going to be and go in. But this is good news, bad news that they're using universal search because it saves them doing that. But there are 2 problems here. First is they don't include all the services in the universal search. So I know Netflix does not cooperate with many of the universal search features. Netflix wants you coming into their apps. I'm not sure Disney does either with Disney Plus, but I could be wrong there. But anyway, that's the first thing. But the biggest thing to note here is that these universal searches and the whole interface, so when you see recommendations in the TV OS interface, these are not neutral. They are biased. And the problem is that consumers don't typically know that. And it's very difficult to know that. So as you mentioned, I took a look at, I searched on a couple of shows to just see what each of the providers were telling me about those shows. And I have, because I'm in the business, I have 3 smart TVs and 2 or 3 of the streaming media players. So I think I've got like 5 of the top 6 or 7 TV OSs in my home. And I did a search on probably one of the most ubiquitously available shows on streaming, which is Murder, She Wrote. And what I found was pretty revealing, I thought. So I started with Roku OS. I mean, it's the market leader, right? And Roku OS leads with the fast channel dedicated to the show. So when you do the search on Roku, you get right at the top, all on its lonesome, you get a box which you can click on, which will take you to the Murder, She Wrote channel, which is in the Roku channel. And that's really where you start. And you have to dig down to find anything else. And what's more, they don't even tell you everywhere that it's available. So the same channel that I mentioned, the Murder, She Wrote channel, is also available on Pluto TV. Well, Roku didn't even tell me it was there. I didn't know it was there. Doing the same search on Google TV has that channel in its free play fast. So, when you get Google TV, that's the fast that's built into it. It's available there. However, I had to click and browse to find the 8 other ways that were also available. And they did, by the way, tell me about Pluto. So there was that. They're leading with their free play fast channel first. Fire TV, they only gave me one option to watch, and that was the live channel, which is in their built-in fast. They didn't even tell me it was available anywhere else. Vizio Smartwatch OS, they just returned a list of paid options, so they give me a list of SVOD services where it was available, not free ones, and they didn't have, that isn't available in the built-in Vizio free fast, which is Watch Free Plus. It's not available in there. So I guess the point here is that each one of these TV OSs heavily favored their own service. So and this was Murder, She Wrote. This is something that is widely available on services and in a lot of fast services. And I'm getting, from each of these, I'm getting a very biased view. I'm being nudged in the direction of their service. Now, okay, so if they're doing that here, you can bet that they're doing that for anything that you search on. They've got some algorithm running in the back that says, if we have this, put it first. And this could be harming you. So, for example, you could be directed to a pay service in that TV OS and end up paying for something that you have available for free, either in a fast service that's also available on that service, or in one of your subscribed services. Fire TV, it was ridiculous. It only told me one place that I could watch Murder, She Wrote, which is kind of crazy, right? Because it's available in a lot of different places. So I think the lesson I learned from this was, if you're a user, when you pick your TV OS, when you buy that TV, just be aware that you're buying into an ecosystem which heavily favors the person that owns that TV OS. And this is probably not something that we think about in the moment when we're doing that search, but we definitely should be aware of that as an issue with the TV OSs that we're using.
And here's the concluding question from you for you from that story. Does any of that surprise you?
It doesn't, Will, but what it does is it really reinforces to me the importance of the TV OS in the decision-making process in what we watch. And I can tell you right now, there is a big problem with smart TVs and over-the-air antenna TV. So, I don't know, there's 20 million homes in the US that rely on over-the-air TV as a key source of television content. Well, good luck finding it on a lot of these smart TVs. I looked for the Rockford Files, and I verified before I did this, Will, it's available on KDTV DT3, that's 14.3, so it's one of the Diginets, but it's available. I can tune that channel, and I have 3 smart TVs connected to an antenna. Not one of them told me that, when I searched in them, told me that was available as for free on a broadcast channel. Not one of them. And goodness me, finding the broadcast channels on these TVs is even challenging. So even if you knew it was there, you'll have a tough time figuring out how to get there. So
Well, you're showing your biases in terms of shows you like, your age. The Rockford Files, I think, was when I was a teenager. Who can forget that James Garner's Camaro, right?
Yeah. The obligatory car chase.
Exactly.
But I guess, yes, maybe I am showing my age in those searches, but I was just looking for content that I knew was ubiquitously available. I could have searched on Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune or, The Voice or something like that, but I just picked those. I plan on covering this a lot more going forward, Will. So maybe this is a subject that we can return to, but I think knowing that TVOS is biased, I think it's very important for us to keep that in mind when we're doing those searches.
Yep, fair points. And I think that's what we have for today. So good chatting. Covered a fair amount of ground here today in today's podcast. So unless you have anything else, we'll say goodbye to our audiences for this week.
I don't have anything else this week, Will.
All right, then we're over and out. Thanks everyone for listening in, and we'll see you again next week.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.